Hey everyone, I'm Anthony Vandegrift with Endtime Ministries, and this is Prophecy in the News. There's a place in the world today that many would say is the most contested real estate on earth. The Muslims refer to it as the Noble Sanctuary. The Bible referred to it as Mount Moriah. But for the most part, us today, we actually recognize it as the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is one of the most fought over places in the entire world. The Muslims claim it as their third holy site, while the Jews are fighting to make it their first holy site. The Jews feel that they should have the right to pray on the Temple Mount. Many Jewish activists recently in the news have been going to the Temple Mount and fighting for this right, and this is causing chaos with the Muslims because they feel that only Muslim prayers should be uttered on the Temple Mount because it right now is their holy site. But the Jews do their best to be able to pray in secret. They go up there and they're escorted with Israeli police, and some will speak on their cell phones pretending to have a conversation with someone, but in actuality, they're actually praying. Some will actually drop a coin to be able to bow down in the presence of their God as an act of worship, but to others who are just looking on, it would appear that they just dropped a coin and they're trying to pick it up. So they do what they can in order to pray right now, but they're fighting for liberty to pray on the Temple Mount. And there are a lot of people who are in favor of this, but there are also people who oppose it. There are some people who are so extreme to say that the Temple Mount doesn't even exist. Therefore, the right for the Jews to pray on the Temple Mount isn't even a matter of question. There are some people who feel like this is ridiculous, though, and they say that every Jewish person should be able to go on the Temple Mount every single hour of the day and be able to pray. Now, some people are looking for middle ground. Some people are opposing a possible sharing arrangement. Some people say, why don't we just give the Jews an hour a day and they can go up there on this designated hour and they can pray just like they want to. So these are the different things that are involved with Jews being able to pray and have right to the Temple Mount. Now, there are also Jews who feel that they should build their third temple on the Temple Mount. This is where their first two temples were built, and they feel that they need to reconstruct their temple in the same place the Bible says that the previous temples were built. There's actually an institution referred to as the Temple Institute, and they have put together all the utensils and everything needed for the temple. The only thing that they require at this point is the temple itself. One of the directors, Rabbi Chaim Richman, actually feels that the temple is going to be built, and he believes that it should be built where the Dome of the Rock currently stands, which is an interesting thing because it doesn't appear that it's going anywhere, so we'll have to see what exactly happens with that in the future. Now, all this is so interesting because when we look at all of this through the viewpoint of Bible prophecy, we have a little more insight on what actually is going to happen. When we look in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4, we know that a temple like Rabbi Chaim Richman wants to be constructed will be constructed because the Antichrist will claim to be God when he sits in the temple of God. He can't sit in the temple if the temple is not there. So we know a temple is going to be built. The other interesting passage that we can go to is in Revelation chapter number 11, verses 1 through 2. John, as he was writing, was told to measure the temple, but not to measure the outer court of the temple because that would be trodden down to the Gentiles for 42 months. So again, we know there's going to be a temple. You can't measure a temple if it's not there, but the temple is designated for the Jewish people. The outer court will be designated for the Gentiles, or in this case, the Muslims. So there is going to be a sharing arrangement on the Temple Mount, just like some have already proposed. So the interesting thing is, how are we actually going to get to this point? Because the Muslims feel like this is strictly for them, although the Jews also want it. Some people have even said that a holy war could break out, and if this were to happen, if the Muslims were to riot and actually strike war on Israel because of all the conflicts on the Temple Mount, you then have all these Islamic nations that would come against Israel in battle. You would have places like Syria and Iran, Iraq, and Turkey. And if that were to happen, you would have the United States to get involved because they back and support Israel. And if that were to happen, you would have places like Russia and China who support these Islamic nations come into war, and then all of a sudden you have World War III just as the Bible prophesies. And then with this happening, you would have all this chaos, and then, of course, peace would have to follow, and you would have a sharing arrangement proposed for the Temple Mount, just like Daniel 9:27 says there's going to be, and this agreement would be signed. The Jews would have right to the Temple Mount, and just as John was told to measure the temple, not the outer court, because that would be trodden down the Gentiles, we would see that scenario played out in reality if all these things were to happen. Now, it could happen another way, but the thing that we do know is just as the Bible tells it, that's exactly what's going to happen. So it's always interesting to look at the news through the viewpoint of Bible prophecy, because we see everything that's going on right now, and we see that it applies directly to what God foresaw and foretold us of in His very Word. So I wanted to keep you up to date with all that's going on in the news today. Thank you for watching. I'm Anthony Vandegrift with Endtime Ministries, and this has been your Prophecy in the News.